Channel, and thank you for joining me on another of my interviews. Today I'm talking to a very interesting man, Sovereign Pete. That might give you a clue onto what we're going to be talking about. This is the Sovereign Project, a project that is designed to link people who are sovereign together and to help those who want to be free. Pete, welcome to the show. It's lovely to have you with me this afternoon.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
We, as you may know on the channel, may not know, we've been talking about natural law, common law, sovereignty, all of this, and had many different guests who have a different look at sovereignty. You're called the Sovereign Project, so if anyone knows anything about sovereignty and stuff, it should be you. I think we've never been in a time where being sovereign is more important. And a lot of people are obviously interested in that and how you become sovereign, what you need to do. Is it complicated? Is it easy? And
wide angle with a green filter glued on
some
there.
more about that. So maybe we could just start with a little bit about yourself and how you sort of thought about sovereignty and becoming sovereign, and then what the project's about.
Sure, yeah. It all began years ago. We're talking almost 30 years ago when we had access to the internet for the first time. It was in the 1990s, early 92, so I got my first computer. And I knew that I was being lied to. Whenever I used to see something on the TV, I think, hang on a minute, I'm being lied to. This is not correct. So I'd go off and do some research. And over time, I began researching everything that the government does or did or said and found the truth. This has covered many different topics. The first one I delved into was climate change, which is completely bogus, complete scam. So I got into that, and I started researching other things like 9/11 happened, started researching that. That led me onto the financial system. Then I realised that there was a great reset coming. I realised they were going to reset the financial system around 2025. This is in about 2010 is when I figured this out and thought I'd better start warning people. So I was starting to warn people back then, and as I was doing my own personal journey, I was realising that we'd been conned or scammed by people within government. And what I found out is I discovered how government actually operates. And one of the things that people don't understand is government is in fact a legal fiction corporation. The UK is a corporation, okay? So this led me down the rabbit hole of trying to learn, and I also had to learn to read. So the average person out there is illiterate. You might be able to recognise text on a piece of paper, but you can't read because you don't understand the meaning behind the words. This is where so many people are failing and getting caught up in the system. Now, when I decided to actually set up the Sovereign Project was just after 2020. Obviously, a certain incident happened. And everyone was panicking over a certain medical procedure, and they were being mandated to have this. And I was looking at everybody, what's the problem? Don't you understand how mandates work? You can't be mandated without a contract. Contract comes first, you agree and consent to the mandate, then the mandate comes second. And this is when I realised that the average person has no clue how contract law works at all.
Yeah.
In fact, the average person doesn't even know the difference between lawful and legal. And perhaps we can get into that.
Yes, no, absolutely. I know, and we've been sort of talking about this, and I think you're right. You know, people forget that they have consent to things, and some people are not aware, as you say, not aware of contracts, and think that contracts is something that you just do with, say, a utility company, and you've got to sign to their agreement, and it's very one-sided, and of course it shouldn't be.
No. In fact, utility companies is not even a contract, it's a service agreement.
Right.
And you are the one who controls it. This is what people don't understand. You control the service agreement, not them. You're the customer. The customer is always right. So, yes, so the contract stuff, people don't understand what a contract is. So let's just touch on what law versus legal is. Because people have got to get the basics right before you understand how the whole system operates. And hopefully we'll have time, we'll get into that. Now, law is something beyond your reach, okay? You cannot change it. It's beyond man's grasp, okay? For example, the law of gravity. If I drop this pen, it goes down, okay? Yeah. So there we go, everybody. Now just get on. It goes down.
Yeah.
I can't change that law. I can't make the pen go up. So that's law. Law is something you can't change, okay? It's beyond your grasp. Legal always means contract. So whenever you hear that word, if someone says you've done something illegal, what they're actually doing is they are referring to a policy within a contract. So when the policeman pulls you over, by the way, policeman means policy enforcer, and that would be a corporate policy enforcer. Policemen do not deal in law. So a policeman pulls you over and says you've done an illegal U-turn. And you know, oh, okay then, can you show me the contract then, where I've agreed to it?
And of course they can't.
They can't,
They
because
can't.
they've actually tricked. There is a contract, but they've tricked you into it.
Right.
And they can't tell you the truth, because then their deception will be shown to you. So they do it because, well, the way they do it is because you registered your car with DVLA. And once you've registered your car with DVLA, you've accepted the highway code. And that is the contract that you've accepted, and now the policeman's pulling you over because you've breached a policy within the DVLA corporation contract. Does that make sense?
Yes. And just, I don't want to stop your flow by interrupting very often, but if you don't know that you've entered into a contract, from my understanding, which is very, very small, and I'm learning this all the time from people like yourself, if you don't know, it's not fully disclosed to you. So in theory, it should be null and void. But effectively, they don't treat you like that because you've registered the title of that vehicle and you've entered into the contract, and so that's they assume. And I guess this is down to the presumptions, but no doubt we'll get onto all of that.
Absolutely correct. You have to have informed consent. That's the key word here. Okay, you can't just be tricked into a contract. Say, for example, a car salesman was going to sell you a car that had 250,000 miles on it, but he wound it back to only 50. He didn't tell you, but you've entered into a contract to buy the car. No, that's not informed consent. You were not informed that the car was clocked. So, informed consent is key, okay? In fact, there's 4 basic areas that I try and help people with. First of all, the burden of proof is placed on the one making the claim. So it doesn't matter who it is, it could be a policeman, a bailiff, or whatever, it could be someone sending you something through the post, it does not matter. If they are making a claim, the burden of proof is on them. So don't panic, don't think you've got to prove anything. You go, no, you've made a claim, burden of proof is on you. You've got to prove your claim. And then there's areas that you should be challenging. One is obligation. This is where most people don't even understand obligation at all. It's like the mandate stuff. I'm saying, are you even obligated to do it? No, you're not. If people understood obligation, so you challenge the obligation. Am I obligated to pay the thing or do the thing? For example, council tax. Am I obligated to pay it? Turns out I'm not. I'm not obligated to pay it. There is no contract between me and the council. The council is a legal fiction corporation. It's a privately owned, for-profit corporation. No different than McDonald's. Do I have a contract with the Leicester City Council or Derby City, whatever council? No, I don't. Am I obligated to pay them? No, I'm not. Then there's authority.
So I'm just going to interrupt you on that one because two things, and I'm hoping I can hold both of those thoughts in my head at the same time. I will try. Firstly, there is a barrister. I won't mention his full name, but people will know. You know who he is. But he's very into sort of martial arts, shall we just say that? That might identify him. Who has made, over the last 12 months, a number of claims that this sort of information is bogus and rubbish. And I noticed somebody sent me a link actually to his to a comment that he made that said, no, the law is made by the government, and the way you know that is if you go to the government's website, it tells you, and you just think, oh,
circular argument.
Yeah, so it's like, I make the law, and here's a page I've written that says I've made the law, which is absolute nonsense. The other thing, which now has I knew that was going to happen.
It always happens.
It always happens about the... Oh yes, yes, I remember the other thing is, an argument that seems logic to me is if you're born and you have nothing, one thing that everyone must surely agree to is that you have the right to shelter. That you haven't got the right. You shouldn't not have the right to shelter. In other words, you're just allowed to perish. If therefore you've got the right to shelter, you should be able to have some sort of house with a roof on it. If that's the case,
yes.
Why do you have to pay a tax just to shelter? Because it's impossible to buy a house without having to have a tax. which is the council tax.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot to unpack there.
Oh right, sorry about
Okay.
that.
So
I don't want to throw you from your
No.
basic tenets so far because you're going really well. This is you're making it so clear. This is what I really I'm enjoying about this. Whereas people have tried to put these points across and perhaps they've been a bit sort of sloppy and what have you. But you're doing so. You obviously live and breathe this.
Thank you. Well, this is what I tend to do. Is I tend to crunch through a lot of legalese, paperwork, nonsense. I've been doing it for decades, and I distill it down into a language that people understand, and I talk in layman's terms. But let's go back to rights. Now, the thing with rights are not there to give you resources, okay? So you can't say you ever have a right to something, because then that has to be provided to you. So if I say, for example, I have a right to this cup of coffee, then that means someone has to provide me with this cup of coffee. Well, that makes them a slave. If they have to do what I will, because I say it's my right to have this cup of coffee, then they have to be a slave to me. But going back to your shelter thing.
Yes.
Now, we've got to try and understand what rights are. There's a lot of people get this wrong, okay? Rights operate within your jurisdiction and within your dominion. Okay, and rights are a package deal. This is another thing that people don't understand. You just don't get rights on their own, and you only get rights when you've reached the age of consent. All right, this is another thing that people got to understand. Children don't have rights, all right, because a right comes in a package deal, and I'll explain this. So a right comes with your authority, your court, your law, your jurisdiction, and it's your freedom. Now, children operate in the jurisdiction of the parents. Okay. By the way, everyone listening in, I'm using the word child and parent as the Oxford English Dictionary, not Black's Law. Hopefully, everyone understands that parent and child are legal terms. Okay. Parent is the pair who pay rent, and child is chattel.
That's the parent who pays rent.
Yeah, the pair who pay rent, because what you become when you're a parent, what you become is you've given up your child to the state. The state owns them.
Yes.
You become a parent, and then you must pay the state to have your children. Children means chattel. So if you're dealing with social services and you knock on your door and say, are you the parents, are they your children? And you say yes, they're going to take your kids.
Right.
Because you've admitted you're the parent.
Parent. But if you say I'm the mother and father.
Correct. If I'm the mother or father, and that's my boy or girl, social services can't move on you. Well, they'll still try if you've registered the child, because obviously if you've registered the child, then technically the state owns the child, okay? Now, in reality, they don't. Now, what I try and do is a lot of people are panicking over the system. They're panicking, oh my God, you know, the living in fear. No. The system is so fragile, it's unbelievable. When you learn how it works, you'll be laughing, because you'll be able to work past the system. You can operate above the system. This is what we do at the Sovereign Fraternity. We operate above the system. Well, we're learning to. Now, going back to the
rights.
To the rights, yes. And we can, if we get time, we'll get back to the child and the registration of the birth certificate. Rights. Okay, so when you have a right, you have to have your authority to enforce it. Okay? And you have to use your court to do so. Now, this is something that's been stolen from us. See, everyone thinks you go to court. You can't go to court. If you go to court, you're going to someone else's court, aren't you?
Yes.
That means you're in someone else's jurisdiction. You've given up your authority. They have control over you. You can't go to court. My court is here with me all the time. Each one of us has our own court. Only a sovereign can actually call a court. And a sovereign is a living, breathing man or woman, not a titled king or queen. Right? They're a constitutional sovereign, in title only, and they're beneath you. So, only a sovereign can hold court. Well, that's me. So, I hold court. I make the law. Within my jurisdiction, within my dominion, I make the law. No one else. This is another thing that's a lie. Like this certain barrister that will remain nameless. Governments cannot ever make law. You can't do it. First of all, it's a legal fiction. It does not exist, right? Parliament is a private corporation, the same as McDonald's. We have no contract with Parliament. Now, if you vote for your MP to get into Parliament, there's no contract between you and him. He doesn't work for you anymore. He works for a private corporation called Parliament. They make policies. those policies do not apply to you unless you accept them. You do not make law. You can't make law. Law, like I said before, law is something you can't control.
Yeah.
It's beyond our reach. All right? So what are they doing? They're actually creating policy, legislation. The word legislator means offerer of law. You go, oh, so this is what they're doing. They're offering me a contract. You can have law within a contract. Like me and you, we can enter into a contract and say every Wednesday you've got to wear a yellow t-shirt. That will be law for us because we've signed a contract.
Yes.
So, also the legal system operates in colour of law as well. It's artificial. So it's colour of law, courts of colour, warrants of colour, all this. This is how they do it. And they only deal in articles which are artificial. They deal in administrative courts that are courts de jure. So court de jure means they don't deal in law. They're telling you this. They're telling you we don't deal in law. In fact, they even say we are courts of law. Well, of means without in legalese. So if it's of something, it's without the thing.
You couldn't make it up, really, except somebody has.
They have. This is a system that goes back thousands of years, and they've been chipping away, and you've got to learn how to read before you can even attempt to decipher what it is they're doing.
Yes.
So, go back to rights. Yes, rights do not give you resources. So you can never say, I have a right to a house, I have a right to a car, I have a right to a coffee, because that means they have to be provided to you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You
So the illusion that the example that I gave, that I was sort of saying, in theory,
Yep.
you should have, no one should stop you from having shelter, I suppose is what I was
That's
trying to...
correct.
Yes, no one should be able to stop. So I was saying you should have a right to do it, but no one should stop you from saying, I want a roof over my head because
Yes.
when it rains, I don't want to get cold. And
Correct.
who's going to argue with that? But no one, therefore, should tax you because you just want to protect yourself.
Correct.
And of course, in this country, you can't just, in theory, in legal terms, you have to be very careful how I speak now. In legal terms, in their world, you can't just build a house and have that shelter because
Okay.
they'll come along and say, well, okay, we'll have some council tax from you, please.
Yes.
And you go, well, where did I agree that? I'm just sheltering in my house, thank you very much.
Correct. Now, we've got to get into the language. Language is key. This is how these bureaucrats, these parasite bureaucrats who have been stealing our wealth for decades and centuries. By the way, they're stealing about 95% of our wealth now. We're living on 5% now. It's getting critical. And they want it all, by the way. It's all done in the language. So going back to the rights thing, yes, you're correct. So the language is key. Instead of saying I have a right to a house, you should be saying no one has the right to take away my house.
Right,
You
yes.
flip the language.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing. See, these devious politicians will trick people, right? And what they'll do is they'll get you all excited and say, you have the right to healthcare. And everyone will go, cheer, yeah, and they'll vote in the MP. But what this MP is not telling you is he's not saying rights, he's actually saying privileges and allowances. Here's the thing. Your rights are yours. They come from you. Okay? Now, if you're religious, you can say it comes from your God. That's not a problem. You can say, I've got divine rights from my God. That's fine. But make sure you define your God. Do not go into these courts and say, my rights come from God. Because those courts use a different God. And we can get into that if we've got time. So, your rights are yours. They come from you. If you ever say your rights come from someone else, you're always going to be a slave. Because they are the ones who are controlling it, right?
Yes.
It's
Because
like-
who gives them the right to tell you?
Absolutely correct. Absolutely.
Especially if we're all born equal and no one's above the law,
Correct.
who gives them the right to suddenly tell you what to do?
Exactly. But they're being deceptive with the language. They will pull you into a constitution. That's how they'll do it. Now, the thing with a constitution, that's a trap. There's loads of traps within the system, right? It's like Magna Carta and all the rest of it. People go, oh, Magna Carta this or Constitution that. No. Here's the thing. Any constitution, like in America, I know we've got one here. Well, sorry, not we. I've got nothing to do with Britain or the UK, so I slipped up myself. I should not have used the word we. I know there's a constitution here within this corporate country, not within the UK. Anyway, America. So they've got a constitution, and everyone's going Second Amendment, right to bear arms. And I go, no. You already have the right to bear arms. If you're pointing at a document written by someone else, and you're saying that's where I get my rights, they can take those rights away.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Now, the thing with a constitution is, a constitution, no citizen, civilian, or member of the public is ever protected by or has access to any constitution. A lot of people think they're protected. No, you are not. So here's the thing. A constitution, not like in America. Can an American citizen change the constitution? Can he phone up Biden and say, hey, Biden, I want to make an amendment?
Good point. No, yeah, that's
You
it.
can't change it. So if you can't change it, then it's not going to protect you. Now the thing is these constitutions are not written in sort of English. There's a hidden meaning behind them. They sound fluffy and nice on the face of it. And that is the trap. That makes you get pulled into it. So you think, oh, the Constitution, I'm protected by it. No. If you accept the Constitution, what that does is it makes you a citizen. That's a legal title. Citizen means slave to the city.
Yes.
You are the lowest of the low. So you're now a slave to the city. You've accepted the Constitution. That makes you a constitutor. And you go, oh, okay, what's a constitutor? What's that mean? Constitutor is the person who, through agreement, has agreed to pay the debts of someone else. So, who are you paying the debts? The state.
Yes.
So, if you accept the Constitution, okay, then that makes you a constitutor, which means you've agreed to pay the debt of the state, i.e. the national debt. By the way, the national debt is what the government owes us. That's what they owe us, that money. So, yeah, I'd like it back, please, because I'm a creditor, by the way, so I'd like it back. So, yeah, Constitution, you've got to be very careful. So, get back onto the council tax stuff and how they trick you.
Mm.
This is how they do it. It's all in the language. Now, you're absolutely correct. No one has the right to tax your private home. Okay, they don't do that. And they can't tax you as a man or a woman. They don't do that either. What they'll do is they'll call you a resident and they'll claim that you live in a dwelling and they'll tax that.
Right.
Now, if you accept that, if you accept the term legal title resident, and you accept that, yes, I live in a dwelling, yeah, you've got to pay council tax then. You've agreed, you've consented. We've got to get into these legal titles. So resident, what does resident mean? Resident is the person who does not own the property. The resident is the person who's conducting commerce within the property. So if you're a resident, they're considering you as acting within commerce. And then you go dwelling. Well, what does that mean? Great, the word down. Well in. Okay, there's the word well in there. Okay, so what it is, this goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. It comes from the terminology husband. Now, you ask the average person, what's a husband? And they go, oh, married man. No, it doesn't mean that. It comes from the word husbandi. Got the word bond in there. The hus bit stands for house. House, bond, I. Oh, okay, what's that? Well, that was applied to a serf or a slave who lived upon the Lord's land, and the Lord allowed the slave to live in a house. Husbandi, under a bond. So you still have to pay the Lord. That gave the man or the serf, the slave, resources. So a woman would go looking for a man with resources and then get herself a husband. Husbandi.
Mm.
Now, a husbandi lives in a dwelling. And you go, okay, what's dwelling mean? Well, the word means well. If you live in your home and you own it outright, you're doing well. The word d, or the suffix d, is the opposite of the word. Well is the opposite of well. So you're not doing well.
Yeah.
Exactly, you're not doing well. And you're living in your master's hut, not doing well. So that's why the council tax say, we're going to tax your dwelling, because they consider you a serf who's bonded to the state. That's all in the language. It took me years to decipher all this.
Mm. Oh, and I can imagine you're so fluent in it, and of course, as you're explaining it, it's so bleeding obvious, you know, to put it frankly. So it's very interesting, because I was speaking to a gentleman earlier today on the phone who was talking about UK sovereignty and constitution, and you've already turned that 180 degrees.
Sorry.
Well, don't be sorry. I think people, but I think people will be thinking, wow. I mean, this is very empowering. And I wanted you to continue. I don't really want to keep stopping, but I know that through talking to many of the guests, and what I love about being able to offer guests like you a platform, and I'm so pleased that the YouTube channel is growing because it's not about me, it's about people like yourself getting the message out. But people will often say, oh, but this is all very well, Richard. How do we enforce it? They've got the police, they've got the paramilitary, they've got the courts, and they put the frighteners on. And if you don't take the medical intervention, they'll probably just come along and kick your door down and stick the needle in you. In a way, they say it's just semantics, isn't it?
Yes and no. We are in a war. That's the only way to say it. It's happening. 2020 it began. And people like us, I mean, you're involved, you're on the front lines, I'm on the front lines, we're like the trailblazers here, okay? All I'm doing is I'm fighting on the front line, I'm discovering all this information, and I'm throwing it behind me and says, here's some information, come along, right?
Yeah.
Now, if more and more people get into this, then there's going to be like a critical mass, and then people are just going to figure it out. They don't have to figure it out, all of it, because it's intensely complicated. If you start getting into the trust, ecclesiastical law, there's some heavy going stuff. If you know how money works, all this. But if you can get the basics right, and we can get enough people who want to take back their authority, want to become free, want to take their rights back, and they want to learn this stuff, then they can do it from their own home using the pen. So they can start doing letters and notices, tickets step by step, make it simple. Like, for example, 15-minute cities is so easy to topple, it's unbelievable. People have just got to wake up to what's going on. Everyone's panicking. No.
Yes.
Too many people are waiting to be saved. Do not wait to be saved. First of all, you've got to get the sovereign mindset. That's key. Okay,
Right.
This is what we do with the Sovereign Workshop. I hold a Sovereign Workshop every week, and I help people to break the slave mentality. Let's just touch on the slave mentality, and we'll get back to 15-minute cities. There's some questions that I ask people, and I test them to see if they've got the slave mentality or the sovereign mentality, okay? Now, I'll ask you the question, you don't have to answer it, okay? And everyone listening and watching this, all right, just think of the answer in your brain. Don't say anything, okay? What's your credit rating? Now, if a number popped in there and you were going to tell me what your credit rating is, sorry to tell you, but you were brainwashed. You've got the slave mentality. The sovereign would say, I didn't give anyone authority to give me a credit rating. Who the hell has given me a credit rating? Someone out there that I don't know has decided to give me a credit rating. Not only have they given me a credit rating, but they're selling my private details to anyone who wants to buy it. Get that man here in front of me now, okay? That's the sovereign mindset. So all of you said, oh, my credit rating's this good. Sorry, you're a slave. Here's another question for you. What's your national insurance number?
Oh dear, oh dear.
Yes, if you're thinking of your national insurance number, sorry to tell you, you've got the slave mentality. You've got to break this. You've got to break this brainwashing. Again, how dare someone give me a national insurance number? Did I ask for it? I don't think I did. Did I fill out some form saying, please give me a national insurance number?
Suddenly you start thinking of the prisoner, I am not a number, Patrick McGowan. They were telling you back then.
Yes. They put it in films and TV programs to tell you this. I think the first one was Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
They're telling you this stuff. They put it in Matrix and all these other films, and they're telling you. So, but yes.
But we've become so thick and so indoctrined, the system from birth through the educational system, through the workplace. The language that you've been breaking down has become so universal that as soon as they say, what is your name, you're already stating it. And of course you don't even notice the capitalization that is the same as on a tombstone. You don't notice that. And all those things. So yes, give us some more of your sovereign-minded questions.
Yes. National insurance number. So straight away, you've got to break your slave mentality. Here's another thing as well. I get it all the time. People contact me all the time, and they say this. They normally say this: Am I allowed to do the thing?
Right.
And I'm going, well, if you don't have a pre-existing contract with somebody and you're not going to cause any harm, then yes, you can do it. You see, if you're asking yourself, am I allowed to do it, then you're mentally trapped. You see
Yes.
how the government has done it?
Yes, absolutely.
So, you see, the problem is most people are living in fear right now. Millions of people all over the planet, they're living in fear. But the reason is they are trapped in their own mind. They can't escape it. I mean, I had to do something back in, I think it was 2021. I was seeing news reports of people setting themselves on fire due to mandates for a medical procedure, and this is it. I said, I know.
My
I know.
God.
And I was like almost going, I've got to reach out to these people. Oh my God. But you can understand the brainwashing at that point.
Yeah.
So, it's me. I said, who the hell's going to give me a mandate? I mean, the lockdown didn't apply to me. I was out there. Well, if I loved it because the roads were empty.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was out there making videos, and I would either have people saying, "Oh, brilliant, Richard, you're bringing," because I was doing walks and stuff, and I was bringing the outside to those people who daren't go out, and so I was doing that. So I'd either have people saying, "Oh, thank God, you're bringing, we daren't go out, we don't want to get it," and they bought into it, but they were pleased to have somebody going about showing them the outside world. Because on the other flip side, you had those people saying you're spreading COVID, you're not wearing a mask, you're interacting with people, you're even riding your bike or in your car, and you're not wearing a mask in your car. It's like, for goodness sake. And so yeah, and I remember one time I was in the supermarket buying some food, and somebody said to me, "Can you put your mask on?" And I said to him, "Well, I can, but I choose not to." I said, "You asked me the wrong question. You meant, will I put it on?" And the answer is, no, I won't.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it was a highlight of the lockdown for me, I suppose. Because he just went, oh,
I was waiting for someone to say that to me. I went into petrol stations and shops and no one said anything. But
Yeah.
I think it might have been the skinhead or something.
Well, exactly. We both got the same hairdresser. He's brutal. He is brutal, but we love him.
By the way, just something I discovered about hair loss. It's your diet that causes this, unfortunately. Nutrient deficiency.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So you're telling me for the nearly 60 years I've been on this earth, I've been nutrient deficient. I don't know. Here's me eating all this organic food and everything.
Yeah.
Maybe in a few months' time it'll start. I'll end up with an afro or something.
My colour's coming back ever since I changed my diet, but I digress.
That's a little bonus, ladies and gentlemen.
I studied everything. It's not just the financial system or the legal system. It's cancer, global warming, all of the lies, all of it. So I've been busy.
Good man. Yes.
15-minute cities. So let's get into this. Right. There's two areas that the government can control this 15-minute city. One is through facial recognition when you're walking down the street, and the other is through the use of your car. Okay. Now, one of these, they're quite relatively simple to solve. The first one, CCTV, is not facial recognition, everybody. There's a big difference. Now, CCTV just picks up whatever's on the street. So if I'm walking down the street and there's a jewellery shop and they've got a security camera on the outside and they just catch a picture of me as I'm walking along, no harm done. I'm in the public, I'm in common land, okay, no harm done. That's CCTV. Facial recognition is very, very different, because what they're doing with facial recognition is they're taking that image and then they're going to look you up. So they're going to find out who you are. Well, wait a minute. No one has the right to do that. You can't look someone up without cause. So, in other words, this is how it works. Let's say you harm me. I don't know. Let's say you reverse into my car, you bump my car, and I manage to take a picture of it, and you run off.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And you've gone and went, oh, God. Well, I now have the right to look you up.
Oh.
Because you
Yes.
caused the problem.
Yes. And I've not owned up to it. I've run away.
Yeah, you've run up. You've run up. So that's it. I've got a picture of you and give it to a private detective and say, there you go and look him up and I'll serve you notice and sue you for damages.
Oh, hello. He's here already.
Yes.
I wasn't difficult to find, was I? No.
So there has to be a cause, all right? So if you're on CCTV and then someone looks you up
There we go.
and then sends you a fine, they don't have the right to do that. There is no contract. Remember that informed consent we spoke about earlier?
Yes.
All you have to do, this is very simple. You can serve notice on any of these councils. This is where people have got to get proactive, all right? Please don't do petitions. I know there's a lot of people saying, oh, let's do a petition. No, that's a trap. The government has a department that sets up to petitions to petition against government. Why do you think they do that?
Yes.
You see, the problem with a petition, if you petition, you're accepting the obligation.
Yes,
That's
of
the
course.
trap.
Yes.
But if I turn around and say, well, I'm not even obligated, why would I even petition it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's the sovereign mindset again. You know, so if you petition, you've accepted the obligation and now you're contracted. And you've just signed. And a petition does not hold any weight in a court of law. Because it's, no matter how many signatures are on it, it's only considered one voice because it's one document. So,
yeah.
you've got to get away from petitions, people. You've got to get and start doing your own notices. At home, on your computer, and serve notice on the council or the department that's going to be doing this CCTV nonsense. And all you're doing is you serve notice and say, I hereby give you notice that I do not authorise you to use my image in any way, shape or form. You do not have the right to look up my details and I do not accept any contracts whatsoever. Failure to do so will result in a fine of damages, say £100,000. Thank you very much. Boom. Get it witnessed, 2 witnesses, send it Royal Mail, registered mail. Got to start using Royal Mail. Do not use websites, texts, mobile phones, don't do that. Paperwork, people, wet ink signatures. So that's the CCTV done easily, because if you get a ticket, you can say, well, I never contracted.
Right. Yeah. Where's the consent? Where's the consent?
And the people behind government can't use assumed consent. In other words, your silence means you consented. Because no, I sent
Because you've told them, yes, you've given them a notice. This is absolutely fantastic.
Simple as that. Simple as that. You go, boom, I've served you notice, done. That's equity law, by the way. Equity law operates above acts and statutes. Acts and statutes are very low down on the totem pole. Very low down. In fact, if you start learning the system, it's in the acts and statutes only work in the jurisdiction of the debtor, which is called a democracy. And that only applies to members of the public, citizens and civilians. Well, I'm none of them.
Yes.
But anyway, so that's that. Now, the car one is going to be a bit more difficult. However, there's a silver lining to this one. I think people are really going to enjoy this one. Right. Have you heard? We're going to start at the beginning, so I'm going to try and explain. You see, the problem is I have to explain how the system works so you understand the solution. So
Yes.
a lot of people want a simple solution to an answer.
But it's good to know this. It's good to know the system because presumably you can apply that to different things, or at least the mindset to
Yes.
different things.
Yes, the key is the mindset. Language is the second thing. Learn to read. Got to learn to read. And once you learn to read, is paperwork. Get your paperwork in order. Get used to writing out notices and affidavits and all the rest of it and signing stuff. Anyway, so let's start at the beginning. You've heard of a certain German guy who wants us to eat bugs, eat the bugs.
Mm.
And he's famous for saying a quote where he says, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
Yes. If only
Now-
he had a cat. You know, the one thing he hasn't
Yes,
got
yes.
is a cat to stroke. That's the one thing the poor bugger hasn't got.
Yeah,
Maybe
we'll
cats
have to
don't
send
like
one.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably true actually.
Yeah.
Because they like animals, that's for sure. They want to kill them. All the
Yeah.
animals. They want to kill all the pets, don't they? Want to
Don't
take all
they?
the
Yeah,
pets.
that's right.
But anyway, now a lot of people believe that the Agenda 2030 means that they are going to take away everything we own. And I've got some bad news for you. No, they've already done it. You don't own anything now, legally.
Mm.
I'm going to use air quotes, everybody, legally, and I'm also going to say this system is not legitimate. Not legitimate in any way, shape or form. So don't panic, everybody, and there is a way out if you know how the system works. So, what have they done? Why do we not own anything? Well, if you say you own something, it doesn't mean you own it. And you go, that doesn't make sense. What does that mean? Huh? Well, ownership. right? Everyone's heard of the word ownership. That's maritime law. You're entering onto a ship called ownership. Now, say you've got say there's a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Okay? Now I can make a claim that I own it, but does that mean I also have the rights to it? And does it mean I also have title to it? No. You can own something, but then not have the rights to it and also not have title to it. So, for example, if you're a landlord, I'm using air quotes, everybody, you own the property, the land, okay, the house, but you rent it out. So you own it, but the tenant has the rights to use it. You don't. So a lot of people think when they say they own something, they own it outright, that you've got full and clear title and you have all the rights to it. No, you don't. So what's happened is throughout, this has been going on for thousands of years, okay? It's the system which is called commerce. I don't have time to go into it now, but it's basically a pagan religion, all right? When you start
Okay.
Yeah, when you start digging deep into this, when you start learning how the courts operate and how, that's another subject all on its own. But anyway, so
we'll get you back for the pagan,
Yeah, I'll dig. I've been digging deep. So, but anyway, so the way it works in commerce, you can only control what you create. All right, so you have to create it. So if I created the cup and the coffee and everything like that, if I made the cup,
yes,
I made the coffee and all of it, then I have full entitled rights to it. I own it. I created it. Okay. Now, everything that's made today, like your car. There will be what is called a manufacturer's statement of origin. Okay? So the car is made, and then there's a manufacturer's statement of origin. That is the original document to say where that car came from and who made it. Say it's Henry Ford. It won't be him himself, obviously, but Henry Ford will sign off on it. There'll be a stamp, blah, blah, blah. That goes off to a department within the government. They securitize it. They'll create a certificate of conformity. The certificate of conformity would go to the dealer. So the dealer has a certificate of conformity, and then you walk into the showroom to buy your brand new Ford whatever for £50,000, right? And of course, the dealer turns around to you and says, would you like us to register it? And of course, because you're stupid, and you go, okay.
Yeah, okay,
yeah, okay, Yogi. This is how, because the thing is the word register means handing over ownership. Right. So the dealer is saying to you, would you like to hand over ownership? And because people are illiterate, go, okay.
Yeah.
So what happens is the car is then registered with DVLA. The certificate of conformity then goes to DVLA. It's operating as a trust now. You've entered into a trust. The DVLA is a corporation operating as a trust, right? They have the certificate of conformity. They have like the asset to the trust that's gone into the trust, okay? Technically, you're the grantor of the trust, so you're the one who's put the certificate into the trust. And they are the trustees, but they do a little dirty flip, and they make you the trustee. So you'll get a logbook back, and it will say registered keeper. And if you look on that logbook, it'll even say this is not proof of ownership. Because
yes,
you don't own
yes, I've seen that, yeah.
You don't own it. You're now the registered keeper.
Which is why the police can take it away from you, and you can't do anything about it.
Exactly. You've contracted. You've allowed it to happen, you see. That's why they can seize it. Now, remember, the police have no authority at all. This is the thing with the police. The police have no authority at all. Zero. Not like 1%, 2%. No, none. None. Okay? They're trapping you with legal entrapment. So, yes, be absolutely correct. So, if you've registered your car with DVLA, then that means that they own it. And if you don't play ball, they can take the car off you because you're in breach of contract, okay? Now, it also means you've agreed to the DVLA highway code, so you're now liable for all of that.
Yes.
And it also means that you've got to pay tax on it because it's government property now. That's what the road tax is for. By the way, the road tax does not pay for the maintenance of the road.
Well, you can see that in the roads at the moment with all the potholes. I mean, if it did, we'd be laughing because of the amount of cars there are. But you're quite right, yeah, clearly.
It didn't. Because remember what they call it? Road Fund License. So what does that mean? What you're doing is paying permission to drive on the road. That's what the tax is for.
Yes.
So anyway, so
And yet on your passport, you should have, the freedom to travel.
yes,
It says on your passport that you've got the freedom to travel. Again, it's somebody giving you permission. I was guess
yes. Now,
that
that's
you
the
don't actually
passport.
need. But
You don't need it.
Yeah.
The passport actually stops you from travelling. When you learn how it actually works, sends you into a postman. But we could get into that another time. But yeah, so the DVLA obviously, and that also means that you have to MOT it. Okay.
Yes.
Now, an MOT has got nothing to do with the reliability or the function of the car. It's actually a tax inspection. So you're actually submitting your government property once a year for tax inspection. That's what you're doing, and you're paying for it. And of course, because you're now using government property, what do you need? You need a license, because you need permission to use government property. That's why you need a driver's license. And of course, what do you have on the front of the car now? You have that license plate, which is a